Welcome to Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you are looking for an interesting commercial, marketing, and sales podcast that is bold, unfiltered, unconventional, and authentic, you are at the right place. Curious how to play the game better and smarter? We will share how we crack the code to hyper growth for our customers. We will invite amazing people. We will share our experience, the first attempts in learning, cracking the code, and finally the results. And last but not least, we will give you food for thought. Now, let's get started.
Hello everybody and welcome to the podcast of Serving Your Market like a King or Queen. And today we welcome Karl Ortmanns. Welcome, Karl.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Really good to have you in, man. So, we know Karl from Revenue Collective / Pavilion, a community where members help each other to grow, where both me and Liesbeth are also a member of. So, Karl he's currently the director of sales and marketing for ATS Automation. He formerly worked at Salesforce, so I think it's fairly good to say that he knows the drill in both software as a service as non-software as a service. He's from Toronto, Canada. He has a love for sports and has good memories of hip-hop concerts like the legend Up in Smoke tour. So welcome, Karl. And could you tell me a little bit more about yourself next to obviously these great things?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to top that. So I've a huge fan of sports. So I got to play football, American football. I know it's not soccer or football your way. We just finished the Euro Cup, right? But no, I played American football for about 17 years and continue to play sports now. Although football's a little bit hard on the body when you get a little bit older, so there's not many guys that are still playing football after 40 plus, so to speak. Tom Brady is defying all kinds of odds. So. But no, big fan of sports. I have 3 kids and do a lot of coaching. So right now we're big into soccer. Actually, soccer starts on Monday, so I'll be coaching him. And then we have hockey season.
The real football, right?
Yeah, European football. That's right. Yeah, soccer was my first sport that I truly loved. So and then I grew a whole bunch. So that didn't work in my favor to continue to play soccer or football. I don't think you see many 6'3", 280-pound guys running around a soccer pitch, kicking the ball. So I had to change sports.
Cool,
Happy
to have you in.
Spent most of my career in software and high tech, and then made a transition into industrial automation where it is a lot of high tech and just in a very different manner. So when you shift your nomenclature from talking about APIs and such to all of a sudden you're talking about millisecond level response times, the technology conversation changes a little bit.
Can imagine that's an all other level, right? Another pitch probably you play on.
Yeah, it's definitely changes. So no, it's been an incredible experience and learning an entirely new industry. And actually had speaking of Revenue Collective or Pavilion. Had a chance to connect with another leader that we worked together in the past, and we get paired up, and she's like, I find it fascinating that like you have completely taken a different path. Like you're not just following SaaS, like you've taken a whole other path, and it was a lot of fun to talk to her about what the differences are and such. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Cool,
man. Happy to have you in, and good to hear your story. So today, what will today all be about, right? What's truly actually the promise of this podcast, right? So Karl has great experience and is a strong leader on aligning and integrating commercial go-to-market teams, right? So that's also what we're going to talk about today. So the topic of today will be leaders who send their one commercial team on a mission into the market serve, right? So we're going to real life stories, innovative ways, and serving your one commercial team on their mission into the market. So super excited to talk about that. And before we start, obviously, we have a tradition. Every time we have a drink with our guest. So what are you having, Karl?
Well, so being a Canadian with a couple of Europeans, I figured that if I was to bring a Scotch, then I wouldn't really be sticking to my Canadian roots. So there's a company in just outside where I live, around Stony Creek, Ontario, called 40 Creek, and they have this. It's called Confederation Oak. So the bottle looks something like this. I'm getting a little bit closer here. So the reason I'm going to select this is a couple of reasons. So my father-in-law for one of his birthdays, my brothers-in-law and I, we jumped in my truck. We took him down to 40 Creek because you got to do a distillery tour, and they were talking. It was whiskey weekend and all of these different things. He said, "No, I really want to do it." And so we jumped in the truck. We went down. It's about a 40-minute drive, and we got there, and we start going through the tour, and we get to meet the actual brewmaster and the person who owns it, and all these different things. And there's all these different whiskeys. So we go on this tour, and you have to go through. And we're going in, and we're talking about it, and then finally, and 40 Creek has been one of my favorite. It's Canadian Club and Crown Royal are very famous Canadian whiskeys. So we get to the point where in with all these barrels, and there's barrels and barrels and barrels everywhere. And this gentleman starts talking to us about the proper way to drink whiskey. And as soon as he said, "Well, let me tell you how to drink whiskey," my immediate thought was, what are you talking about? You pour it in a glass and you drink it, or you put ginger ale, or you put Coke in it. Like it's not that hard.
No.
Right? And he starts talking about the first thing you do. You put it in your mouth and you keep it on the top of your gums and you move it around. You want your gums to feel that burning. And he started talking about the notes of 40 Creek rye whiskey has these notes of vanilla and honey. And I'm looking around at everybody, and they're nodding their heads, and I'm like, what is this guy talking about? How to drink whiskey? And where is he coming up with these notes of honey? And like, this guy's crazy. So he says, you're going to have a chance, and you go and sample some on your way out. So as we're going through, I'm thinking the whole time, like, this guy was talking about all this nonsense about drinking whiskey, and he said, hey guys, just as a reminder, when you get to the last third of a bottle, you have to finish it. And you see, like, because there's a bunch of couples there, and the husbands nudging their wives, like, see, I have to finish it, or else it's gonna go bad. And so we get to the end, and they take us to the bar, and I said, okay, fine, give me the one. So I take this sip, and I start doing what he's talking about. Okay, move it around my mouth for 30 seconds, let my gums feel the burn, swallow, wait 30 seconds, take a sip. Fine, I'll do it. So I do it, wait 30 seconds, and I'm counting in my head, 1, 2, okay, 30. Take the next sip, and it's like, boom, there's honey and vanilla. I'm like, where did this come from? How is there flavors in this? Because I just thought it tastes like whiskey. So then we ended up coming home that night, and a buddy of mine for my 30th birthday gave me a bottle of Macallan, 10-year-old Macallan. And on my birthday night, we didn't appreciate it. He poured a couple of shot glasses, and it was like, yeah, it went down the hatch and nothing to it. So there was really only the neck of the bottle out of it. So I came home and I poured myself a couple, and I did exactly what he said. I'm like, let's see if there's something to this. So I took the first sip. I'm like, still tastes like whiskey. Next thing, and it's like, wow, there's vanilla, and I'm tasting honey. Where is all these flavors coming from? And it changed. So this one it's called Confederation Oak. It's won a number of awards. So it says even on the description is maple, raisin, vanilla, and fig marry praline, honeyed nuts, and buttercream, spice and orange blossom proceed in oaky, smoky, peppered finish. So
I think I'm going to start loving bourbon if I like this. So, it sounds like you're selling this right now. It's one of my favorites, and it's a little bit more expensive than your traditional, like your standard rye, but it is very, very good. So I have my big ball of ice, and drinking it on ice.
Cool, man.
Oh, cheers, Carl.
Yeah. Cheers,
and thank you.
Cheers. Yeah, cheers. Well, when you're talking about taste, mine is mostly I'm having a glass of white. It can differ a little bit when what type of grape it is, but this one, it's a Chardonnay. But this one is, you can see maybe it's quite yellow. So it's really
there is a lot of fruit in it, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a fat wine, and as well as oaky. So we're talking about, keeping it in your mouth, really trying to smell it or taste it. Well, this is one that is one of the best sold wines in 2019, coming from Chile. So
wow.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoy.
So Jeroen?
Yeah.
For me, I got the Hart Brothers. So it's a single cask from the Delmore distillery, aged 11 years on port. It's been one of the special ones I have here at home. So I thought let's keep this one for a special conversation. So.
Well, I'm honored that you're actually keeping it for us. So the other option was I have some bourbon, and I think I was telling Jeroen that I have a 12-year-old Macallan triple cask, triple barrel, I think it is. But it is very, very good too. However, a Canadian content in something like this, I have to bring the Canadian flair.
Yeah, exactly, man. Nice. Enjoy.
Cool. Enjoy. Up to a good conversation. So I think the honor is to me to ask you the first question, Karl. So we are all familiar with, when you're talking about a company's mission. From your experience, why do you believe that commercial teams should be sent on a mission into the market, where the magic happens? What is your view on that?
No one person wins. And it doesn't matter the size of the business. Rarely do you have one person that is going to secure business. It takes an army. It takes a village. We raise kids as a village. There's no one person that actually does it. So, considering that in the market, and as you start to look at the sizing of the company, if you're in the small medium business and it's your average selling price is called $300 a year, you might only need one person, right, to actually procure your system, because $300 is not a huge expense, and typically you're able to get that. However, you have two different teams. You have, and I say two teams that are trying to actually surround the customer early on. So you have marketing and sales. So marketing is content, sales is context. And in order for the two to work together, they truly have to work together in my view. You need sales to provide the context to the customer, and marketing to provide content to actually, because we're trying to look at the market and trying to understand all of the requirements of those customers. So for me, in my belief, is having that unified voice and unified approach. It keeps everybody consistent and focused on the thing that matters. The customer. Because if you don't understand your customer, if you can't speak their language, if your marketing team's over here and your sales team's over here, then you're never going to speak the same language. And the flip side of it is, the bigger the sale, the more people are involved. And if you're not aligned, it creates conflict. And in my view, customers can understand the conflict. You can see it, you can hear it. Because the messaging isn't consistent. So to me, consistent messaging, really understanding the customer and having all aspects of your business aligned with that one view is important. And I think I even told Jeroen on one of our CRO courses how we've taken our approach in the past of even having the secretaries be on message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end, some leaders are saying everyone is in sales, or everyone in the company should be able to understand customer needs and requirements and driving conversations. And of course, maybe not to the level of a sales, maybe as an example, but having that serving mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably understand how they fit in, right? So maybe not really the right word, right? But it's all about creating that wow effects, right? Those touch points with the customer. And that includes also the secretary, right? Or when you visit an office, the receptionist and so on, right? Everybody plays a role, and you can be just playing a generic role. Or if you understand what's the mission of the company, right? You can probably play a differentiated role, no matter what function you fulfill in a company, right? But I think it's important, like you said, Karl, you need to feel that you are part of that army team or whatever, right? It's not a one man or one lady show. So what we see happening more or less around us is I think probably due to COVID is going even into a more of an acceleration. I would almost say, but what we see is that we are entering a people-centric business world, right? So organizations that are not truly adapting to this changing business landscape, that get hit, for example, by environmental factors like COVID and so on, and see growth as just a financial thing. They have a hard time, right? They have a hard time to for example, keep their talent, right? Their commercial talent, but also to attract their talent. Ultimately, leading to could potentially lead to becoming less relevant, and in the end also disappear, right? So I just want to get more of less of an understanding of what is your view on going beyond that, right? So going beyond just financial thing as growth, right? But really seeing growth as converging the three parts of growth. So financial, people and happiness and transformation. And could you help me to understand the importance of that for you as a servant leader to converge those three parts?
The thing that's interesting when you start talking about servant leaders and the reality of COVID. Actually, today we were on one of the webinars with Pavilion, or the Revenue Collective, and they were talking, and the conversation was very much around the speed of innovation. And they talk about, the one stat that stood out to me was the rate of innovation to deploy a technology has increased by 25 times. Think about that. 25. You can take a technology and implement it 25 times faster today. And even with COVID, the acceleration of the digitization, I think the stat was something like it accelerated us by 10 years. I think that was the stat. I think I have 4 or 5 pages of notes. So consider that. And, from me coming from high tech and SaaS, doing this is very natural to me as a person. So the transition for the industry that I'm in is industrial automation, manufacturing. This is not the first step. If you're in this industry, traditionally, you have hey, I would like to talk to you. Okay, good, come see me. That was the very first step. It's always just come see me. Well, you had to adapt. You had to adopt. And even early even to the pandemic, we have customers all around the world. And that first touch point and that first conversation being virtual, it was not everybody had their cameras on because they weren't ready. Mm-hmm. And now you're starting to see cameras are coming on and people are starting to become more engaged because now, Jeroen, you asked me, hey, you're in a different room. Where's all the sports stuff? Because those are things that people clue in on. And even with our team, coaching them to understand the digital clues, because digital selling is here. And companies had to adapt and they had to adopt. And look at the rise of video. The rise of video is up an astronomical amount. I know Vidyard is a company close, near and dear to my heart, and they put out a number of reports just on the scaling of business, the video in business. So for me, I agree that the digitization and looking at it is something to consider. However, the reality of, and I give our CEO a huge amount of credit, and the mantra that the company I work with at ATS, there's this model, the business model of people, process, performance, and it has to start with your people, because if you don't have if you don't have good people and your processes aren't aligned to how you make your people successful, then the performance isn't going to be there. And I'm firm believer in that. I've used it in a different analogy in the past, but as you start to think of it as, if you start with the people in mind and you have a culture where people are not afraid to fail, right? Because transformation comes from failure. You have to learn.
Absolutely.
No.
So if you don't have an environment where people are if they're so afraid to fail, you're never going to get innovation. There's a great video on Netflix, Brené Brown. She talks about courage, and in there she said, no innovation, or sorry, something like no failure, no innovation. And there's a really powerful moment. It's towards the end of it, but that is a fantastic video. If you have some time and you're looking for something to watch,
cool.
Brene Brown is incredible for that.
Great tip
Noted.
for my upcoming holiday. Thanks. Yeah, but that's absolutely true what you're saying. That's but it's a whole different circumstance where people have to get comfortable with. Sorry, I remember the first time that we were recording a podcast, and that I was so aware of my own face all the time, and that it was hard to get my own view of it, focusing on other things because it didn't feel comfortable. I was comfortable with remote working because we worked with European countries for many years. So, we were maybe in front of the wave from that perspective. So home working, different circumstances, but using the camera all the time and everything what you're doing, and also in, sharing your thoughts, your vision, your where you believe in, that's a whole different ball game. And what you're saying, I think people are getting more used to it now, and also, accepting that you're using this medium to bring over a message or the value you would like to deliver, etc.
And in my view too, now with people being more comfortable this way, travel is never going to go away. It's just the way that we travel is going to change. So my personal view is that we're going to have those first one or two conversations. And then if you invite me in and you say, you know what, I do want you to come see us, because at the end of the day, people still buy from people.
Exactly.
There still is still a human component to it. So as you go, and one of the things that I love about travel and love with working with customers is that in the moment learning. You're somewhere and you go, hey, how did you do that? And that whatever that is, what do you mean? Well, how did you do that? How did you come up with it? Well, here's how we did this. We tried these things. You learn so much being there with them. And that's one of the things I truly do miss. But the flip side of it is now as we start to travel and we get back to day-to-day life, I do think that you're going to see a shift where, hey, let's have a couple of conversations. Let's put together a really structured plan and travel effectively versus just come see me. And I've been in businesses and actually have had people where they say, oh, you have a lead for me, or you have an opportunity. Book me a flight. Hold on, let's time it. You're going to get on a flight and try to go see somebody which you have no idea what you want to talk about. Oh, I have to see. The comment was, I need to see the whites of their eyes. Okay, inefficient, right? Because as you book as a Canadian or even as Europeans, right? If you were to come here, let's say you have a big opportunity in Toronto, that's a 3-day trip. Like that's 3 days. So how do we structure the time more efficiently? And let's be smarter with our time. So anyways, I truly believe travel and looking at it in that respect is going to shift. Yeah,
I think a hybrid construction would work very well. On one hand, the more efficiency bringing in, and at the same really qualifying the opportunities, and at the same time, where it's worth it, that you take that opportunity, because at the same time, I really believe in the face-to-face of building relationships, long-term relationships. Yeah. It's harder to do that remote. Of course, you can look at the two of you. I think this is a great example, but it's harder than when you can do it in person. But do you also think that it's changing in ways of, if you look at how you build your whole integrated planning, building an account-centric revenue funnel, everything is more digital. You have to unlock the success. You, as a leader, you have to make sure that your team are enabled and are happy in what they're doing. How are you connecting all those things in a digital world we are living in right now?
Yeah, it's so interesting topic, right? So a perfect example, Jeroen, you and I have never met in person. We've never met, right? And everything has been through a screen. So when we do meet, don't worry, I'll give you a big hug. However, as we start to look at digital, right? And I think one of the biggest changes is when you start to unlock things, you're starting to see the shift from moving away from forms. And that was actually in the CRO courses that Jeroen and I were in, is, unlocking the forms. people are now having access to information at a more rapid pace than they've ever had in the past. So give them access to it. How do you enable people? How do you get them to learn and really lean in? So for us, and in my view is, again, align the messaging, make sure that we're fully aligned to understand, the scope of, how well do we know the industry? How well do you know your customers? How well do you know, how can you speak their language? And one of the things that, has come up, and I've actually asked a few people, is if you know your buyer, if you know your customer as well as you think you do, write their job description and post it to LinkedIn.
That's a cool one.
That's a cool one. I like that. Yeah.
Seriously, if you know them that well, you should be able to write it.
We're going to do the practice as well.
Yeah.
That's something else then, creating a ideal buyer persona profile. Of course, it has a lot of stuff in it, what you're saying, but I can imagine that it's triggering me from different angles how you could fill that in. Yeah.
And consider it as a leader, right? Like, how well do I know you? Is it, do I know that you wake up at 4:00 in the morning and you go and you do your workout, or you do whatever it is, and then you spend time with your kids from this time to this time, and you drop them off and you do these things, and then when you get to the office, you're going to be doing all of these different tasks, and you're going to be going, and then you're going to, like, how well do I know that? And how well can we know it? Because, again, what we might think is, and I think we all see it, right? You get prospected or you get these messages, I wanted to connect to you. Okay, well, change the language. And then the second thing is, I think I understand. Other leaders have seen the same thing. Okay, well, other leaders, are they in the same industry? Are they in the same stage of growth are we at? Like, how well do you know it? And I'm not trying to throw shade. It's just the more that we know, the better we can communicate. And ultimately, that's the biggest thing when we start to look digitally, is how do we better communicate? How do we communicate in a much more effective and a better manner?
Yeah, I like that. And I think it leans also a little bit more into, I think one of the topics we also discussed and addressed at the CRO school, right? We both followed over the last couple of weeks. I think we learned a lot, obviously, together, right? From waterfall business modeling to all things around sales leadership and so on. But I think one of the things, if I remember that we had a good, interesting chat about, Karl, is ditching the word "ing" from marketing, right? And I think that leads pretty good into the topic you addressed earlier, right? So to truly understand the market, right, where you're active in, including the buyers and so on. So and to actually introduce marketing without ing as a new area / role. What, in your view, is actually the value of ditching that ing from marketing that can bring companies, for example, on building those stronger bridges between sales and marketing? But yeah, I just wanted to get your view on that, what that could bring companies.
This is one of the moments I think that stopped all of us in our tracks, and we were like, "Wait a second, what did you just say? Take the ing out of marketing." And it was like, there's no ing in revenuing, right? There's no executive ing, there's no operational ing, right? Like, so it was one of those, like, it's so obvious. And how do you, like, as you take a step back, and Latane and Matt Hines were just brilliant when they talked through it. But who does look at the market? Who owns that? What are we looking at? So, and it's sort of hit really hard. I say it hit square in the face, hit hard for me, because as we start to look at it, like, what does a global expansion look like? And one of the comments was, hey, we want to open a facility in Australia. Great, what does that look like? And the analogy of, like, bowling with bumpers in the lanes, and even if you get your market right, you're still going to get at least knocked down a couple of pins anytime. So that really hit home for me, and starting to really look at how do we make our team successful? Like, what are we doing to invest in them, instead of just saying, well, we think we operate in we're great with high tech customers. Right? What does that mean? Like, is it a certain stage? Is it a certain dollar amount? Is it a certain company size? Is it a certain user base? Like, what does that look like? Where is the...
Do they have a certain belief? Do they have certain values? Do they have a certain mission, a vision, and so on, right? Yeah.
Exactly, right? What is it about that industry? And who are the ones that you can actually understand? Like, who is it that you can actually operate and work with? So that, like, what... And it brings up the theoretical question of who does own the market? Who is looking at it? Because you have sales and marketing and you have success and you have, the revenue. And part of our conversation was we have CROs, we have CMOs, we have COOs, we have CSOs. Who owns the market? And who's looking at it? Who's trying to stay ahead? And that was a really gray area in my view from looking at it. So, really taking a look and understanding the market and having an integrated team that's fully focused on, from a leadership side, to say, okay, look, like, let's make strategic moves and let's look at the market and do the research. Because marketing is a very broad term. Marketing is everything from graphic design to demand gen to personas to all kinds of things. So what portion of that relies in marketing? And again, take the ing out of the word, who owns the market? And I think that's a big question. And I'm not sure that many companies will truly have a defined answer.
Isn't it also because, if you look at goal setting, and we were talking a little bit earlier about integrated goal setting, that very often that marketing isn't connected to that, that's overarching goal setting, and their KPIs are very often not connected to those goal settings. Do you experience that as well? Maybe not every company. Hopefully there are a lot of companies who know how to connect those things together, but because we see it very often, that they live kind of standalone, trying to do their best, but at the same time not really delivering to the business. Next to what you're saying, who owns, the market knowledge, but isn't that all coming together about, who's accountable for what? How are you connected to that goal setting, etc.?
It has to. Like, there is no, like, I truly think it has to. Mark Robert's book, Sales Acceleration Formula, is one of my favorites. And when he was at HubSpot, he talked about this term smarketing. And sales and marketing is a fully aligned. And I firmly have aligned that, because as you start to look at the sales math is nothing without the marketing math too. Right. One of the pictures that was put up was around MQLs, right? Like, what is an MQL? And you have MQLs, marketing is holding a trophy and they're winning, and then you look at sales and they're losing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And again, it's not to
marketing is not bringing me business, and the other way around, etc.
Yeah, and so as I approach it, in my belief is that the closer you are aligned, and you're focused, that really at the end of the day, if you smash your MQL number and you miss your revenue target by the similar amount, nobody's successful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because that means you're either not talking the same language to the audience, or your product market fit just isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But you've congratulations, you've created a really great opportunity to get people to look at your content. But how does it translate? How does it help? And that's the biggest thing, right? Jay Baer again, early in my sort of marketing view, is in a presentation, he said, the difference between selling and helping is 2 letters. And I was, I'm like, what? Selling and helping is 2 letters. And I had to write it down. And I'm looking at the words going, what is he? Oh, I totally get it. And his book Utility is brilliant for this. It's cool. A bit dated at this point, but as you start to look at it and making sure you have that unified approach, and really, help solve problems. Without problems, there is no opportunity to win.
Cool,
man.
So if you talk about that, so in your role, how does the enablement to the team looks like? Because you're talking about context, you're talking about content, and it should be converged at the end, or at least should convert. So, so how do you enable your team, and how important is it in being successful?
Yeah, that would again, it was just very timely because today was the role of enablement is greater than all of the sales roles open today, or something to that effect. It's you have more sales. You have 13 times the number of enablement roles as there is to sales roles available today in Canada. So it was interesting to hear that. So in my belief, you know, I was part of an incredible company early on, called Level Jump Software, and they really look at it as now as a outcome-based enablement. And I really like that approach, because when you start to think about the outcomes, right, you're starting with the end in mind. What is the thing that we want to do? So in aligning with that viewpoint, that's one thing that we've looked at in our team is what is the end in mind? So how do we get there? Well, at the end of the day, we're trying to get people, there's always this race, right? There's 87% of people forget information if it's not retained within 30 days. Okay, good. So who's doing that? When you have sales leaders that are trying to manage multiple people and they're having all of these internal meetings, plus they have leadership meetings, plus, it becomes a bit of a challenge to truly be a coach, right? So having an enablement person that's able to fill that void, I don't want to say void, but fill the gap and say, you know what, we have a problem and it's looking over there. We got to start to address it now. So, you know, on our team, we have a very structured way of coming on board, and there's a couple of things that I really like and we use a lot of video as a tool, and you know, at the end of every day, there's a question, and you take a short video, and it's not a test, it's how can you translate it, because there's inputs and outputs, and I'm a firm believer of I'm going to give you a lot of inputs, but what are the teach back moments? How can you teach me something? And is it working? Because in that way, we can address it. So things like, hey, you know what, at the end of day 4, you're at a barbecue and the grill master is somebody that is a target buyer for you. And they say, hey, you know, Liesbeth, what do you do? What do you say? Right? It's a very casual conversation, but how would you react in that moment? So again, take the formality out of it, just put into a play of like, how would I explain this? And there's no right or wrong answer. What it does is it gives me a feedback loop. Because if I give you all kinds of information and you go, I don't even know what we do. Okay, well then that's on me. I've got to help you in a different manner, because I either have to slow it down, I have to think a little bit differently, or you know what, maybe the methods I'm doing isn't just connecting. So for us, we look at it as a sort of a step-by-step, and everything's a build, right? It's just like a game plan if you're going to play a sport. The goal is always to win the championship. The goal should always be to win the championship. But your game plan can adjust week to week based on your opponent.
But I think it's also in the basis, it's also a matter of trust, that your team is trusting you to, you know, to fail. We use failing as first attempt in learning. So giving your team the trust that it's okay to ask stupid questions, or to, you know, give the wrong answer to something, but at least to make you better, and to do better every day and learn from it. I think at the end that's about, but it's all, I think it's really a cultural thing what you're mentioning right here, because if you're able to bring that culture into your organization, or at least the part you are responsible for, there you're really going to change the whole game. Because I can imagine if that feedback loop is going to work naturally, that the team members are also going to help each other to become better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm completely with you. And that's, I'm a big believer, because really, what is learning? Learning is failure. Mm-hmm. Right? And my career is built on stupid questions. I mean, I think I ask a stupid question every day. To me, it might be stupid to somebody else, but what is the root of a stupid question? It's trying to understand.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. So, and my belief is, let's create an environment where people are willing and they're okay to make mistakes. I had a coach tell me one time, he goes, Karl, if you never lose, I can't help you.
It's true.
Cool. So, Karl, I was thinking also in line with the fail stuff and so on, right? So failing, like you said, right, it helps you to transform, but failing probably helps you also to leave your comfort zone, right, and to win. So, could you tell me about a time that your team actually was winning, right? You sent them on a mission, they were winning, but they still left the place where they were winning.
They still left the place they were winning. So that's a bit of a low. I mean, I could take that in a number of ways, and I see you smirking, so you're setting it up here. You mean leaving an industry, leaving a company, leaving a role? What are you thinking?
No, I'm just more or less thinking. So let's say you are a company that's a portfolio that offers both project business, right, and software as a service. They're magically winning in the project business, but still they decide to leave their comfort zone, right, to start seeing if there's more magic on the other side of the wall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm living it. Actually, is a good example. I'm living it right now. I was brought in to bring a product to market, and the product is owned and developed and created at ATS, the company I work for. It was developed there. The whole category was effectively created, and there was this idea of like, hey, we're doing really, really well with this. And, to our credit, our CEO is saying, hey, look, like we have incredible products. We should have a products arm. And so, I was brought in to bring the product to market and to
Cool.
assist with that. So, right now it's like, we're going to take this thing to market, and maybe not everybody believes in it at a time. But there's firm belief that, trying something new is only a good way of approaching the world, right? Because the only thing that's constant is change. And if we can't change and we can't adapt, then businesses are going to die. And I think that this is it's an example that is close to my heart because I get to deal with it every single day. And it's not easy, right? Like it's everybody likes new, nobody likes different. And when you do something at the same time, it throws everybody out, right? So what we're doing is both at the same time. We're doing something new and different, and people are like, whoa.
We recognize
super
that.
cool.
We recognize that, right?
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, definitely. But that's all part of the game, right? So nobody truly like that. And like you said, we are in it to win it. A business is probably, at least a business should play more like an infinite game, right? There's probably no end over the game. But just as us, right? We the three of us, we have an end. I'm not sure where that is, but before that end comes close, what is still on your bucket list?
It has to be coming to Munich again, going back to Germany and visiting Oktoberfest and actually sitting, like we talked about, Jeroen, is sitting and having a bratwurst and having a couple of those excessively sized beers that just look very
the Maas.
Yeah.
And Liesbeth, we will fill up the Maas with a full bottle of wine, I guess. So
okay, then I will join. And otherwise, I will start to learn drinking beer.
Exactly. So no, it has been a fantastic chat, Karl. Man, it's I think I've made a couple of notes on your stories as well, which really intrigued me, but also some new learnings, which we definitely should adopt and read through. So, it has been a great pleasure to have you in here. Before we close off, more or less, right? So, the conclusion of the podcast, I think serving your team and having a clear mission into the market and guide your team to success, to the place where the magic happens in the market, then it doesn't necessarily have to be one place, right? I think you can create new market categories while you're also still playing in a market where you win. I think we learned a lot today on those topics from you, Karl. So let's say if people want to get in contact with you at the moment, how can I best reach out to you? Is that connecting via LinkedIn, or what would you prefer?
Happy to connect on LinkedIn, and there's that. And I mean, I have some of the other social channels. I don't use them a whole lot, so. If you're into barbecue and lifting heavy things, then Instagram is probably where you'll see some of those strange things that I get to do. But no, this has been a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. And one of the things that I would say, as we sort of wrap up is, the confidence of the company that we work with is being able to create a culture of innovation and failure. And I think one of the things you asked about, like how do we take it to market? I think going to market with a product is that one big step. So hopefully that came through. I feel like we could talk all day, and I would love to ask you all more questions.
You can.
But maybe there'll be a part 2, and we'll have to try a different Canadian whiskey or bourbon or something. Or maybe I'll look for a wine for you, Liesbeth.
Okay, no worries.
I'm pretty sure 222 will make sure that we have a visit somewhere, and either we go to you or you come to Germany.
I hope to do both.
Cool. Let's aim for that.
Thanks for the conversation, Carl.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation.
Thanks, Rev.
Have a good one.
Thanks for being in.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Serving Your Market as Kings or Queens. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. We really appreciate that effort, and we'll catch you in the next episode.